Okay, so let's jump right in. We're doing a deep dive today on something maybe a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, definitely. Thinking about prison. Well, not usually the first place you think of for creativity, especially around money.
Right. But the source material we looked at paints this picture of incredible resourcefulness, hustling, saving, all under extreme limitations.
It really does flip the script. You expect restriction, total lockdown on opportunity, but instead there's this whole underground world.
Exactly. And that's what this deep dive is about, based on the sources you gave us. We want to pull out the key insights, how they actually do it.
How they build businesses and save money when they're cut off from everything we think is essential. No internet, no banks, no startups, none of that.
But the sources highlight what they do have.
Right. Lots of time, incredible pressure, and very, very few resources.
And that combination just forces ingenuity. It creates what the sources actually call an underground economy.
Yeah, and it's wild how value completely shifts in there. Things we barely think about become currency.
Like what? Toothpaste, ramen.
Exactly that. Toothpaste, ramen, stamps sometimes. They're not just items, they're money inside.
And simple skills suddenly become really valuable services.
Absolutely. Things that seem minor out here are big deals in there.
So what kind of specific hustles did the sources mention? What are we talking about?
Well, there's a real range. On the smaller end, you've got guys who can draw, making custom cards, like for birthdays or holidays.
And they get paid in snacks, soap.
Yeah, exactly. Goods, not cash. Or people offering services, maybe helping with legal paperwork if they know a bit, or even fitness training.
But it gets bigger than that too, right? The
Yeah.
sources talked about more organized stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The material mentions actual operations, like betting rings on sports games happening outside, or proper barbershops set up.
Finding a need and filling it, even with basic tools.
That's the core of it. Identify a need in that confined space and figure out how to meet it.
Okay, but how do they learn stuff for the more complex things? Like the source mentioned stock trading or business plans. How?
That part's genuinely mind-blowing. It's all about piecing it together. Donated books, old magazines, any little scrap of financial news they can possibly find.
So intense self-education.
Totally driven by motivation. There was that specific example in the source, right? The guy who planned out a whole real estate empire strategy while locked up.
Yeah, using just those incredibly limited resources. Wow.
It really is.
Okay, let's talk savings then, because that's another layer. Prison jobs, if they even exist, pay practically nothing. Cents an hour, the sources said.
Yeah, pennies. So the idea of saving seems almost impossible.
Which means budgeting isn't just like good practice, it's survival.
Absolutely critical. Every single trade, every bit of commissary, it all matters hugely.
And the impact of saving even a small amount is just magnified, right?
Exponentially. A few dollars saved isn't for a rainy day fund like ours. It buys peace, maybe safety, basic comforts.
Things like shampoo or an extra blanket, suddenly huge luxuries.
Exactly. Things you only get if you've managed to save or trade carefully.
But it's not always just small amounts. The sources actually say some people leave with hundreds, even thousands saved.
Right. Which sounds unbelievable given the income levels.
And the source is clear. This isn't usually from, family sending money or anything illicit. It's from the hustle.
It's years of bartering, grinding away in that underground economy, and what the source called disciplined micro-saving. Building value bit by tiny bit.
Against just enormous odds.
Immense odds.
And that really brings us to the core lesson the source material seems to be pushing. This idea of turning nothing into something.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective. It basically asks, if someone locked in a tiny cell with zero freedom, no internet, no capital,
Using like crushed pencils and cardboard scraps,
if they can generate income and save serious money.
then what does that say about the limits we feel we have on the outside?
It really drives home that final point from the source. The tools aren't what makes the difference.
It's not about having the best resources.
Oh, it's the mindset.
That's it. The resourcefulness, seeing needs, the discipline, the sheer grit to create opportunity. That's the real takeaway here.
So thinking about that level of ingenuity, that discipline coming from an environment with almost literally nothing.
Maybe the final thought for you listening is, what if you worried less about not having enough stuff, enough resources?
And focus more on cultivating that mindset,
Right.
that ability to make something from whatever you do have. Something to think about.